Good evening and welcome to the fourth lecture in the 2022 Innovation in the Berkshires lecture series. My name is Carol Allman-Morton and I'm the Executive Director of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Berkshire Community College. OLLI at BCC is a volunteer-driven program that is a non-credit learning community for adults 50 years old and better, including courses, special interest groups, lectures, and events in person and online. You can learn more at our website, berkshireolli.org. I'm gonna just pop that in the chat. In 2019, OLLI at BCC initiated a collaborative partnership with One Berkshire and the Berkshire Innovation Center, resulting in multiple lecture series to advance regional understanding and readiness in the field of emergent tech. We are so glad to be part of this initiative, which melds together key OLLI goals to learn and to contribute meaningfully to our community. You can learn more about our partner organizations, One Berkshire and the Berkshire Innovation Center, on their websites, which I'm going to also put in the chat. Tonight's session will be recorded and posted on the OLLI YouTube page in case you miss anything, or if you want to share the link with a friend. You can also see the past 3 lectures on the same site. This series will continue Wednesdays through November 16th, and you're welcome to attend any and all of the lectures. So now I'm going to turn things over to Catherine Kidd, who will be moderating tonight. Catherine is a member of our Tech Impact Collaborative Committee, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol. It's a pleasure for me to serve as the moderator for this event tonight. For those of you who don't know, over the last 15 years, Massachusetts has become one of the leading states in the nation in the area of life sciences and life science businesses. And the Berkshires are part of that. And we have 4 presenters this evening. We'll start with Jean Leclerc. Jean is the Senior Director of Business Development and Workforce Partnership with the Mass Life Science Center based at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. In this role, she develops and executes strategies to enhance life science job growth in the Commonwealth. And that includes working with organizations like the BIC. Before going to the Mass Life Science Center, she worked at doing economic development with the Hill Towns here in Western Massachusetts. So she knows our region very well. And she also worked with the Boston Public Market. She has a bachelor's degree from Boston University and a master's degree from the Brandeis Heller School of Social Policy and Management. Our second guest tonight will be Torsten Schott, who's the general manager at Spectrum Plastics, and I'll give you more about his background before he speaks. Our third speaker will be Linnea Coons, who is the director of marketing at Boyd. Many of you know that business locally and it's a key player with the BIC. And our final speaker will be Roger Morin from Rousselet Robelet Centrifuges. So all important biotech businesses. So I'm going to hand it off to Jean right now, and she's having problems with her video, but she is not having problems with her PowerPoint. So I think she's going to share her screen now, and we will begin. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be with you. I am sorry that you can't see me, but again, the slides are the important part. So forgive me for that. Really excited to be joining this panel. I'm really excited to be speaking with you all. As Catherine mentioned, I've done some work in Western Mass, so it's always a pleasure for me in this role, which does have a lot of activities in Eastern Mass. I generally say yes to anything west of Worcester is sort of what I've been saying. So truly my pleasure to be addressing you this evening. So the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center, for those of you who might not be familiar, is a quasi-public agency. So we focus on economic development and investment, specifically in the life sciences in Massachusetts. We serve as the hub of the Mass Life Sciences ecosystem in partnership with many other agencies, entities, organizations that I'll talk a little bit more about later. We encourage innovation. That includes investing in good science, yes, but it's also about strengthening and protecting Massachusetts' current global leadership position in the life sciences. For those of you that might not be aware, Massachusetts is pretty much the global hub of life science innovation. And we've been really proud of that. It's something that has only grown, especially over the last decade to 15 years, and something that we're projecting to continue to grow in the future. Part of that is certainly driven by regional economic development, including Western Mass, which we're proud of. Included in our mandate also is the acceleration and commercialization of promising treatments. At the end of the day, this is all about helping patients. As we all sort of learned in the last couple of years with the pandemic, it's important that we have pharma at the table, but also academics, also government, industry players, as well as members of the workforce development team. All of these pieces of the ecosystem work together to, we sort of like to say every once in a while, change the world. We are also focused, especially in recent years and certainly in this upcoming year, as we think about our goals and programming, to focus on driving economic and STEM workforce development across every industry and across the nation. Everyone is having trouble hiring. I'm sure you're no strangers to that, regardless of your background or your current professional experience. But in the life sciences, we are no exception. And a lot of these companies are on the clock when it comes to producing these life-saving drugs, these vaccines, these therapies, these products that are desperately needed by so many patients around the world. So when they can't find workers to produce them, yes, it's a slowdown, yes, it's a hit to their bottom line, but at the end of the day, it's also about getting folks these really essential products and treatments. Our strategy is sort of structured in this way where we focus on 3 pillars: innovation, business development, and regionalization. So again, as a quasi-public agency, we are the beneficiary of taxpayer dollars, and we deploy those taxpayer dollars in the service of these particular efforts along these lines. So the innovation, business development, and regionalization pillars are underpinned by metrics and evaluation, the function of convening, so where we can bring together different pieces of the ecosystem to work together and leverage each other's investments. We see that as a net benefit. We are authorized by the legislature every few years. In this case, we were most recently authorized in 2018 with $623 million through 2023. So next year we'll be reauthorizing, hopefully, the Massachusetts Life Sciences Initiative that sort of gave birth to all of this growth. Overarching everything we do is also workforce development, as well as the commercialization piece I talked about. We also have a strong focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that it's not sort of the same usual suspects that are benefiting from this economy and from this development and from this innovation. And that includes regional diversity. We want to make sure that the benefits and the dynamism that we're seeing in this industry and in this ecosystem are felt by everyone in the Commonwealth as much as possible. So that means bringing new folks into the industry through life science career awareness, as well as making sure that these companies that are setting up shop are engaging with their communities and getting engaged in STEM education, providing funding for STEM scholarships, any other sort of community involvement pieces that we can encourage them to do. So since inception in 2007, we have funded over 5,000 college and high school internships. Now that number is a little bit closer to 1,000 companies. We've supplied STEM equipment grants to 247 public middle and high schools across the Commonwealth. We've given about $250 million in tax incentives to life science companies. That's for job creation. In the last couple of years, the problem with that program is that we've seen it, yes, fund the creation of jobs, but the problem now is filling those jobs. So that's why you see this focus on workforce development, especially recently, to sort of dovetail in with those tax incentives meant to create the jobs. We've also invested over $700 million in the life sciences ecosystem that supports research, as well as entrepreneurship at early stage companies. We always like to encourage public-private partnerships. So a lot of our grants are not just for academic research, but you must have sort of a company partner at the table when you apply for those grants, as well as capital projects, which I'll also get into more detail going down the line. We work really closely with some other government entities as well as private nonprofits, in addition to our partnerships with industry and academia. Team Massachusetts, we like to call ourselves, is several of these sort of collaborative entities. We work to attract companies to Massachusetts. We work with companies that are already here, that are looking to expand. Our focus is always outside of Boston, Cambridge. There's plenty of innovation and plenty of entrepreneurship happening in downtown Boston, Cambridge, Kendall Square. But what we really want to do is make sure that those companies, when they consider expansion, they're not looking at North Carolina, they're not looking at New Jersey, but they're looking at Worcester, they're looking at Pittsfield, they're looking at Chicopee and Springfield and Westfield, to make sure that they know those opportunities are there, where the real estate is certainly much more affordable. The talent is available, the academic research is happening. We're really trying to export that growth beyond 95. Just some items that we like to brag about when we're talking to pretty much anyone, but especially folks outside of Massachusetts. So just some things you can be proud of. In Massachusetts, we host 18 of the 20 largest biotech and pharma companies. That's the highest concentration in the world in terms of representation by really large industry players. We have 50 plus universities and world-class research hospitals that, again, all work together, exchange talent as well as research. Number one per capita in terms of industry investment. One of the most attractive aspects of our ecosystem is the well-educated and well-funded venture capital community. And that's no exception, not just in Eastern Mass, but Central and Western as well. We're also number one in terms of per capita NIH funding, so National Institutes of Health. That's annual funding for research projects at universities and institutions. So people always talk about, is this life science development thing kind of a bubble? Is it going to burst at some point? One of the reasons why our answer to that is usually no, is that this research isn't slowing down. The universities aren't going anywhere. The UMass system, not just the Harvards and the MITs, but UMass as well, UMass Lowell, UMass Amherst, we're seeing all this amazing research coming out of these other organizations that aren't necessarily world renowned, but are churning out these translational technologies and new companies every year. And so the fact that we're not seeing that slow down means that these companies are going to continue to be growing and scaling in Massachusetts. They're going to continue to need space. They're going to continue to need workers as well. So just to give you a sense of the industry's impact employment-wise, we have at this point about 100,000 people working in the life sciences in the Commonwealth. That is projected to grow by about 40,000 over the next 3 to 5 years, given the amount of lab space we have coming online. So again, that's another reason for our workforce development focus. We want to make sure that we're engaging with not just, again, the four-year colleges and universities, but the vocational schools, the technical high schools, the community colleges that might be able to stand up programs around biotech, or we also work with medtech companies, so advanced manufacturing, training skills in 3 to 6 month training programs, not 4-year bachelor's degrees, that prepare these students to go on to really fulfilling, really necessary careers, making really good salaries with all this potential for growth, upward mobility. And in many cases, what we're seeing is that these students, and in many cases, these adults that might be interested in upskilling, simply aren't aware of these careers or aware of the opportunity. So a lot of our work is around that life science career awareness to fill the immense need that we're seeing in the industry. Another point of pride to be aware of, our drug development pipeline. So one of the things that pushes these companies to need to hire people to produce what they're exporting, these drug candidates. So 14% of the entire US pipeline of all new drugs and treatments and therapies comes out of Massachusetts, and Massachusetts represents 7% of the entire global pipeline. That is far and away the most. Massachusetts is contributing immensely to this larger sense of global and national addressing of healthcare issues. So whether that is a vaccine for a global pandemic, or a new medical device, or a treatment, or a therapy, that includes digital health. It's something we're very proud to be able to support. And again, we need the workforce engine behind it to keep that going. One of our favorite, or my favorite, things that we invest in are incubators and accelerators that encourage this entrepreneurship and encourages small companies to grow, and gives folks who might have a really good idea and a good team the resources they need to scale it. So this is just, we have all kinds of resources on our website, masslifesciences.com, including this very popular map of every incubator and accelerator in the state, some of which we've funded, some of which we haven't, but you'll see that map is certainly clustered in Eastern Mass. But that lone dot out there in Pittsfield is the Berkshire Innovation Center, which we were proud to support with a $12 million grant. We're always looking for ways to engage more in Western Mass, and we see the Berkshire Innovation Center, the BIC, as such a shining star of opportunity in terms of the world-class R&D facilities they offer, the opportunity for training, as well as, again, those general business services to scale up businesses and entrepreneurs in Western Mass in the life sciences. I won't go into great detail in all of our programs, just to not harp on it, but just so you know, we run about a dozen different programs that support all kinds of different scientific focus areas. It includes a tax incentive program, as I mentioned earlier, for job growth. It includes some programming to attract companies to Massachusetts who aren't already here. We run an internship program. We offer tax credits to angel investors. We have specific public-private partnership grants focused on digital health, women's health, novel therapeutics delivery, and then we also are focused on supporting greater gender parity for the next generation of life science entrepreneurs. So Mass Next Gen is our program that supports women-led early stage life science companies, and we're looking forward to expanding that next year to include entrepreneurs of color as well. One of our favorite quotes that we can't stop using in every slide deck we put together for any audience. One of Moderna's co-founders said that Massachusetts is, I would argue, the only place where this vaccine could have been developed. And we're proud of that in terms of what our ecosystem is able to accomplish because of the sense of collaboration, because of the strong infrastructure we have, because of the innovative spirit. So just again, as citizens of the great Commonwealth, just take pride in the fact that the rest of the world does recognize on some level that what we have here in Massachusetts is special. And so we want to keep that going and strengthen it and expand it. I won't go through this whole list either to give the other panelists time, but we also have an immense resource when it comes to training programs and workforce development infrastructure. So again, as I mentioned, not just the four-year colleges and universities, but these amazing technical institutes, community colleges, folk schools, as well as nonprofit career training. So if you have any interest, regardless of your background or where you're coming from, if you have any interest in the life sciences, getting involved, participating either as a job seeker or someone who just wants to encourage young people to find fulfilling careers, I'm happy to chat with anyone. Feel free to reach out. I can connect you with existing programs. We're also in a really exciting time with a potential new governor's, certainly a new governor's administration coming on, and our reauthorization next year to think about what programs we can expand, where we should be putting more funding, what's really effective when it comes to training in terms of including wraparound services, in terms of the audiences we're reaching out to, engaging young people even as early as middle school, in scientific and STEM careers. So we're excited to sort of keep that momentum going and expand it. So again, if you have ideas or suggestions or just want to get involved, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's my contact info. My job in terms of business development and workforce partnerships is literally to talk to people, not just companies. So truly, if you have any questions, if you want to find a way to work together with us or potentially benefit from one of our programs as an applicant, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to engage and answer any questions. And if you can't tell, I'm very enthusiastic about every piece of this job. So I'm happy to talk to anyone. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Jean. That's very exciting to hear all of those specific details about what's happening in Massachusetts in this industry. We're going to shift our focus now to what's happening in the Berkshires. And our first guest is Torsten Schott, who is general manager at Spectrum Plastics in Pittsfield. And Spectrum is based in Atlanta, Georgia, but they have a specialty plastics operation here. And the company designs, builds, and runs production of plastic injection molding tools to deliver bioabsorbable implants, components for hip and knee replacements, and general surgical applications in the medical device and life science area. Mr. Schott came to the United States from Germany on a short-term exchange and has stayed for 20 years. His work experience, in addition to the work at Spectrum Plastics, has included developing products that enhance genome sequencing, blood diagnosis, and minimally invasive and electrosurgery equipment. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Torsten to give us an introduction to Spectrum Plastics and their work in this area.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. Thank you, Carol, for having me here tonight as well, and welcome to the audience as well. And thank you for taking the time to listening to what we have to present about the area here in the Berkshires and for Spectrum Plastics specifically. I would love to start by presenting a brief video that should take approximately 3 minutes. And I hope the sound actually carries through, so we'll see how that works.
Just don't forget to hit the share computer sound button and you should be good.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
Let's start again from scratch. I guess I didn't conclude that process. Here we go. You should hopefully see it now. So what you're about to see here are really pictures from our Pittsfield facility. So those activities are taking place here, and that is work that we are pursuing here. So our in-house tool shop, we actually have technicians and tool makers involved. We machine our own tools as well, we design them, we machine them, and we produce products as well. Clean room applications help us to use product and gets used in finance and medical. So that is the easy part of the presentation, really, and you can see some of the activities that are indeed taking place here in Pittsfield, and there's some elevated and advanced manufacturing that is taking place here that I'd love to share with you here. Talking a little bit about our business, we have essentially producing engineering solutions here in an engineering solution company in that plastic injection molding space. So our market is in medical devices, technology-driven solutions for customers here regionally, but also internationally as well. We have a full service in-house tool design. We produce the tools as you've seen in the video, and we shoot product in those tools or shoot plastic in those tools to produce an actual component for a medical device that is then being used in a surgery on patients out in clinics. We have other different aspects of that operational process, of that production process, that we incorporate in our work, heavily engineering focus. But having said that, there are several different aspects that are more technician-based in the tool room, for example, with tool makers, with assemblers, but also on our shop floor with setup technicians, mold technicians, people who know how to run a plastics process and who learn that over time and on the job, so to say, in one way, shape, or form, and developing a career here at Spectrum Plastics based on our business model. As you can see from our operational perspective, we have a ISO Class 8 clean room, which helps especially for implants, but also for any other surgery products. We're registered with the FDA as well as with other entities to an ISO standard that governs the production of medical devices, the ISO 13485 2016 in this case, and we are operating from a technology perspective in certain areas being molding technologies, additive manufacturing, micro molding, automation, and some assembly work in and of itself. We have currently a 24/5 production, and we are growing. We are growing business. We have been growing here in the Berkshires over the last 4 to 5 years specifically. Although the business was founded in 1986 after an acquisition by a private equity company in 2018, there has been tremendous growth. And we're looking forward to growing this business beyond from this perspective and essentially doubling the size of the business here over the next course of the 3 to 5 years. Some of the products we produce, and you've seen some of those in the video as well, implantable screws that are produced on an absorbable basis, meaning that's a material that gets absorbed by your body. That's a special material that we are processing here on our end, and then making parts out of it accordingly. And then, as I said, different devices for surgical applications. As you can see, partially robotic surgeries where that high precision really comes into play. Micro molding on the top part, you can see how small those parts are, for example, and that is all work that is taking place. So some of the things and some of the roles and areas that we're looking for, and I've tried to list that out here a little bit. As you can see on the top line, operations, tool room, etc. Those are the more traditional areas and departments we have in our business. And on the left side are some of the degrees and roles and educations that you could have, or skill set that you can have in order to go active into those roles. And that ranges from entry level to degreed positions and everything in between. What we offer here is a career ladder and not just a job. So we have employees who have started with us 15, 20, close to 30 years ago and are still with us in one way, shape, or form. We have multiple examples of individuals who started out with us, let's say in the tool room, and now they're working as a project engineer, and they've gradually worked themselves into those roles as they progressed in their career. Or individuals who started out as a material handler, for example, learned the resin in and of itself, learned the basics of the industry in our business, worked themselves and learned themselves into process engineering. We help them with that by supporting them with education, with investment, with the time in order to get that education and develop our workforce. And now they are a process engineer here on site. And that's what Spectrum is about. That's what we're looking for. We are a highly technically driven company, and we're operating in a very rewarding field as it pertains to the medical device industry in general. Being able to help people, being able to know that we work on something where there is a patient at the end of the line, so to say, on a table, that we can help make a difference. That could be a family member, that could be someone else's family member we work with, or it could be a friend or a complete stranger for that matter. But having the opportunity to be part of something like that, to get involved in that fashion and resolving some technical issues for our customers and the patients in the hospital to make their life better and improve their quality of life. That's really what this business is about. If you have any questions about Spectrum in and of itself, I encourage you to come and see us, come reach out, talk to us, and we would love to hear from you and would love to be able to work together with your organizations in one way, shape, or form, be it through co-op programs, internship programs, or just a tour of the facility for that matter, and getting to know what we're doing here and how we may be able to help the area or help you and your organization in one way, shape, or form. You can either reach out to myself, and my information is listed here, or to our HR manager, and of course, see us on our webpage, spectrumplasticsgroup.com. All right. Thank you very much, Catherine. That concludes my presentation. And again, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to showcase Spectrum Plastics, specifically our Pittsfield site here a little bit, and being part of this event. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Torsten. I think as someone who's not been involved in this industry, I hear things like clean manufacturing, safe and specialized, and your video really brought that to life. So thank you very much for that. For those of you listening, please put your questions in the chat. And our next speaker is going to be Linnea Coons. Linnea is the Director of Marketing at Boyd Biomedical, based here in Lee. This is one of our homegrown companies. So we have a range of companies from outside who have facilities here like Spectrum, but Boyd is a locally developed company. Linnea is an experienced marketer after 7 years in the marketing field at Boyd, working on the business-to-business medical device industry. And some of you may have seen the documentary film about Boyd's work during COVID, Project Frontline, and the video podcast, Boyd Biomedical Design Stories. She has an interesting background. Her education was at Cornell University. She loves cold things. She was a Nordic skier, including being a coach at Colby College, and has an interest, in addition to her biomedical work, in climate disruption and climate change, and has worked in Juneau, Alaska, looking at issues related to glaciers. So coming from a very interesting background. So I'm going to turn it over to Linnea, and we'll learn a little bit more about Boyd. And I should mention that Boyd Biomedical is one of the key partners for the BIC.
Great, thank you so much, Catherine, for that introduction. I'm just going to share my screen. We, for those of you who may be familiar with our business old name, we recently rebranded to Boyd Biomedical earlier this year, and so we were formerly known as Boyd Technologies. I'm just going to run through this brief overview presentation, and then I'm happy to answer questions about it. So we are, we're located in Lee, Massachusetts. That's where our headquarters are, and a manufacturing base. We have a sales and engineering office in Boston as well. And we're just under 70 people. And that includes our production team and our office support, engineering, and other sales and other teams as well. we are a contract manufacturer, and so that what that means is that everything that we make has someone else's name on it. We make it to their specification. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is that there's been an evolution of healthcare, and it's going through this period of dislocation. And some of that was accelerated by the pandemic. And so you're seeing sort of a shift to remote patient monitoring, so that instead of staying in a hospital or a doctor's office, they'll send you home with a way to monitor your symptoms. And so the pace of technology has really accelerated. And so there's a need for these new products. And it's a really exciting time to be in the marketplace. We specialize in sort of four main areas: single-use assemblies, stick-to-skin devices, in vitro diagnostics, and drug and delivery and fluid management. And that stems a little bit out of our history. Was when we started as a finishing house for the paper industry. And as that industry started to die down, we made a strategic shift to focus just on life science and medical device industries. But these are still flexible materials. They're single-use flexible materials, and they're used in highly regulated industries. The way that we sell our services is through three main platforms: design services in the early side of the innovation, manufacturing, which has always been sort of our bread and butter, actually making the products, and then commercial services and helping our customers get their products to market. And so this sort of, we see ourselves as part of the supply chain and in helping our customers, and they can come to us at any part of the commercialization process, and we act as an arm to sort of help them along that path. So from a jobs perspective, we have obviously on the early side, on the design services side, we're looking for engineers. It could be mechanical engineers or biomedical engineers, material science, people who have really highly technical expertise. We also love a lot of quality technicians, people with a keen eye for detail for doing testing and regulatory support. And that can be really someone with a keen eye for detail. It can be anyone from an entry-level position. We love to get people in-house with some experience under their wings too. We have clean room space as well. I don't have it listed on here, but we're building out more clean room spaces as really the need for a lot of our production spaces. Sorry, my cat has decided to come in as well. Our manufacturing side of things, we are ISO 13485 certified and FDA registered as a medical device manufacturer. And so a lot of the production employees that we hire can be trained on the job. We love to get people in, again, who have some expertise or a mechanical mindset and being able to solve problems on the go. I'd love it if all of our automation worked perfectly, but sometimes there are those times when you just need to solve problems and be agile and all that. The third part is commercialization services, and so we've partnered with fulfillment operations. And so for, again, some of our customers who don't have warehouse space or who need to hold on to inventory or do kit packing, we offer that as a service as well. And then creative services, which is maybe somewhat obvious, is more in my wheelhouse, is helping our customers tell their stories. And so that could be the product story or with their culture and just helping them sort of breathe some life into that side of it. In part is because we work with customers from large OEMs, really name brand folks, all the way down to startups who could be a doctor who had an idea to solve a specific problem, and they don't necessarily have the bandwidth or the ability to be able to hire out all of the support that they needed to commercialize. And so I'm just going to, yeah, I think I'll just sort of finish it there. I can drop it into the chat. Our website is boydbymedical.com, and along with our careers, our open careers listing. And I guess, yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you very much, Linnea. And for me, it's really fun to see what's happening at Boyd, since it's a company that I've been following for the last few years since we moved to the Berkshires. Our final speaker is Roger Morin, and he comes to us from, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Rousselet-Robelet centrifuges. And Roger has an engineering background. He went to Greenfield Community College, so he's a Western Mass person, and then to UMass Amherst. And he has also worked in other medically oriented fields before coming to Rousselet. So Roger, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you for the introduction. I'm going to keep this brief. I work for Rousselet-Robotel. Rousselet-Robotel are two centrifuge manufacturers that had each been around for over 100 years. They merged in 2000. We make solid liquid centrifuges, liquid separators, and centrifugal partition chromatography. They're all unique technologies that are used throughout the life sciences as well as every other industry. We have clients in Massachusetts as well as the rest of the country who are doing everything from enzyme purification, tissue regeneration media. We work with companies doing pharmaceutical grade silicone. What's the word I'm looking for? Pharmaceutical grade silicone purification. We work with CGMP food manufacturing facilities, and we work in the cannabinoid industry, and we also do bioabsorbable materials, such as similar to some of the materials I'm sure that Spectrum is working with. So we're doing that with companies out in Cambridge right now. So Rousselet-Robotel has been in Pittsfield since the 1970s, and I joined 4 years ago. We've actually, for the last several years, been working with Berkshire Innovation Center using lab space because we've started doing a lot of our customer testing in their wet lab. So again, I'm going to keep this brief. We are looking for engineers right now, people with chemical engineering and mechanical backgrounds. And I can provide any of our company information that you may be interested in further on the session.
Much, Roger. Jean, we've got some questions in the chat, but do you have questions or comments from your perspective, looking across what's happening in Massachusetts and as it relates to these firms here in the Berkshires?
My immediate reaction to everything everyone's saying is pretty much, again, on the workforce front, not to sound like a total broken record, but these are all great companies that I am familiar with, and I think are very much emblematic of some of the successes that we're seeing in Massachusetts in general in the life sciences. So I'm so proud to have all of these companies in Mass, and I'm glad that you got them to speak on this panel. So thank you all for your time. So I guess I'm seeing one question in the chat. at least that might be addressed or relevant to this, about question for anyone recruiting for technical industries. How do you encourage students that might not naturally be drawn to STEM coursework or who aren't good at math to learn that there are a number of enjoyable careers for them in tech fields? I like this description. Many right-brained art and writing students don't know how fun technical writing and illustration can be. Communication majors don't know the breadth of opportunities that a technical communication degree can unfold. So for our part on that front, we're doing a lot when it comes to life science career awareness. So again, at the middle and high school level, we fund a lot of equipment grants as well as teacher professional development at those levels for STEM. But even going beyond that, what we're finding is that sometimes we really like to go on tours of these classrooms and schools across the Commonwealth. And sometimes when we go, we'll talk to the students and we'll ask them, who are all engaged in looking at microscopes and testing and learning how to pipette, all these really great skills. How many of you actually want a career in life sciences? And almost no one ever raises their hand, except maybe one person might raise their hand and say they want to be a doctor or something. So we're seeing this disconnect where we're investing all of this funding and all of these resources and all of this great technical capacity on training folks, but then not connecting them directly to the careers, which is a shame because, again, my job is to talk to companies all day long and they are desperate for people. So if the companies are desperate for people, they're paying really well, they have these great careers, and we're providing all the equipment and the training, there is a missing piece there that is around life science career awareness. So there's a really great campaign. I'll put the link in the chat, called Life Sciences in Full Color. And you can go to their website, lifesciencesinfullcolor.com. It's a campaign that we funded through Lab Central, which is in Cambridge. So for now, this is starting in Greater Boston, but we're hoping to scale this out across the Commonwealth. And it basically is just videos, interviews, quick little slices of life snapshots of folks that actually work in the life sciences, but people speaking in terms of, listen, I'm from this community, I only have a high school degree, but I work as a biomanufacturing engineer. I work as a technical associate. I work in advanced manufacturing. These careers that these kids might think are very intimidating, and that there are these barriers to entry for, but actually the way to get into those careers in some cases is a training program that might be free, that the last 3 to 6 months, rather than a 4-year bachelor's degree, a master's in science, a PhD. You don't really need those at this point. So that's my response to the workforce development piece, career awareness. I'd love to hear from the other panelists in terms of your efforts around, or efforts or pain points or challenges around workforce development and recruitment. Anything that is working, any partnerships you have with training providers that we could maybe learn from and scale a little bit. Yeah, I'll hand it off. I do see another question in the chat very much related to this in terms of Berkshire Community College, MCLA, which have absolutely been engaged and at the table for all of this so far.
Okay, Torsten, I'm going to pass this one to you to start because you're hoping to double the size of your operation here in the Berkshires over the next 3 to 5 years. So as you're looking at expansion of the firm, what kind of strategies have you found have worked in other parts of the country and that you're finding are working here in the Berkshires?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And that's what we do here at Spectrum specifically is we try to mix our development program between on the job and internal, but also external coursework in one way, shape, or form. That could be partnering with local communities or local community colleges in one way, shape, or form, and attracting talent from that end, but also existing workforce development and sending people off, as simple as it sounds, off to a course for a couple of days or a week to develop their skill set in one way, shape, or form. Well, there's funding available from our end. We have baked that and budgeted that in one way, shape, or form. I do believe there is also some investments or incentives from state in one way, shape, or form that we may be able to tap into to support these kind of programs to develop the skill set that we require internally, and then free up another career spot for some new entry person, individual, if you will, or as I said, working with the educational institutions locally as well as regionally to find that right talent that we're looking for in any way, shape, or form. But also, as I said, pulling in individuals for co-ops during that time of learning, during their education in one way, shape, or form, And that could be a technician certificate, that could be an engineering degree, that could be any sort of hand craftsmanship, if you will. Or if you look at more from the arts perspective, yes, yeah, there are opportunities in our world as well. I mean, we also need individuals in other areas, be it in our HR department or be it in our administrative area or in our procurement area in one way, shape, or form, where the technical skill set may be not as important as some of the soft skills in one way, shape, or form. And even in the technical side of things, I think there are individuals who need to have that more creative and design thinking. It may not necessarily be as strong in all the traditional STEM factions, if you will. However, that drives partially that creativity in the industry and the creativity in our area as well, that propels the company forward, that creates that competitive advantage in one way, shape, or form.
Okay, thank you very much. Roger, for Rousselet Robitel, how do you see the recruitment and the workforce development? How has that changed over the last few years?
Well, it's been difficult. We generally tend to retain employees for extended periods of time. I've been at the company for 4 years, and I'm still the newest engineer at the company. So we have been looking for engineers recently, and we've been doing recruitment campaigns at Berkshire Community College. We've been going to various colleges around the area. We've attended job fairs at UMass. We're looking for very specialized individuals, people who have both chemical engineering backgrounds and mechanical backgrounds. So the recruitment process has been very tough recently. So we're starting to branch out and look for people who might have more electrical backgrounds, because that's very applicable to the equipment that we build. And it's been a challenge for sure, trying to do recruitment in this industry recently. You muted?
Oh, thank you, Roger. And I think it's important to be realistic about the potential here, but I'm glad we've got a lot of great engineering schools in the nearby area. Linnea, it seems like at Boyd Biomedical, you also have that kind of career path where people can enter at different points and grow in that process. How has that changed during your time at Boyd?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so to go back to get, I think, more interest and more exposure locally, we've often hosted high school groups to come through. And so I think it speaks to the earlier question about how do you get these people who are not maybe necessarily interested in the STEM side of things to be able to see what's available and hopefully picture themselves there. We also partnered with where you've used the Mass Life Science Center internship program pretty heavily for the last couple of years, and that has been a really great way for Massachusetts interns to be able to come into a company and really sort of give it a tryout before hopefully coming to work for us once they graduate. And then, we offer certainly on-the-job training, but for people who want to level up their skills and specific skill sets as on an as needed basis. And it really sort of depends on what projects that we have, on what's needed sort of for engineering, but also for our production workforce as well, through Mass MEP we've partnered with in the past. And then also for the BIC, I know is also ramping up some programs that would really like to get some of our people over to as well.
Thank you very much. We're going to shift gears a little bit here We've been talking a lot about workforce development, and in the chat, you'll see that there are links to things that are happening at Berkshire Community College, as well as at the BIC on these things. But one of our participants has said, could you put on your futurist hat and share an observation or two about a tech solution with transformative aspects? Dazzle us with what you think is coming. So anybody have a dazzler?
One of my recent dazzlers has been when it comes to training, this is kind of workforce development adjacent, but the potential for virtual reality and augmented reality for training purposes. So some of the equipment that some of these students are getting trained on is expensive. And when companies are wanting community colleges or vocational schools to train students on it, there's certainly sometimes an opportunity to apply for a grant, either through us or some other entity where maybe we can buy that kind of equipment. Maybe we can stand up a training program that walks students through it. But one of the alternative solutions that I've seen work in a couple of different places now and that I think might be scaling is, if any of you have seen an Oculus or any other sort of virtual reality goggle experience, a three-dimensional environment, or the augmented reality version where you might have a browser-based training, or again, the same sort of goggle experience where you're looking into an actual lab, but there is a simulated sort of almost holographic representation of the machine you might be trained on. So sometimes it is push this button, look for this indicator, move this lever over here. Sometimes you are just sort of monitoring things, and it is relatively simple to train. So in a virtual reality environment, you have the ability to scale and train more people at once, rather than, again, needing to purchase an individual actual training machine or entire lab setup for every single school or community college you're working on. So happy to hear from the others if there's mind blowers. I love the futurist hat, so great question.
Okay. Is there somebody else who'd like to jump in on the futurist piece?
Yeah, I'll just put a plug in for a little bit of shameless plug for our podcast, which really what we're doing with it, it's called Boyd Biomedical Design Stores, and it's in-depth interviews with experts and entrepreneurs working in the life science ecosystem in Massachusetts. And so a lot of that is focused on the Boston area, but it's also expands to the whole of Massachusetts. And so what we do is we interview the CEOs and some of the founders of these really innovative companies that are coming up with really cool solutions to problems that maybe you didn't think existed. And so coming soon down the road is we went and we interviewed Vicarious Surgical, and they're in the development process of making a very small robot for surgical applications, and it's really going to change the paradigm of care. We also interviewed a Paragonics, which is created a new way to ship organs for transplant so that you can have a much better record of success for the transplant recipients. We've talked to folks who have come up with a new material for stents, and so that it reduces the chance of getting an infection if you need to have a PICC line put in. And so I think also this speaks a little bit to how do you get STEM people or non-STEM people interested. There's this is one of my favorite parts of my job, is I get to go and really see these tour these really cool innovative companies and ask questions about how they solve problems. But there's so much opportunity for innovation, and that's just really just a few of them.
Okay, Torsten, and I know that this also relates to work that Boyd does. These biodegradable screws. I'm thinking about this because one of my brothers broke his ankle, and they had to put in a metal screw, which had to be removed because then he couldn't wear his work boots. He's a contractor. So he had an extra surgery. So I was really interested in your biodegradable screws, and I know that Boyd works on those things too. Could you explain, and there's also a question in the chat, could you explain how that works?
Sure, yes, yeah. To a certain extent, we have what I can share, so to say, but essentially there is a organic material that is being used usually out of cornstarch or sugar beets, if you will, and a certain aspect is being utilized to synthesize the raw material for that particular application. There's some additional conditioning happening in terms of the temperature and the stresses of the material before we process it on our end and actually mold it into a form. And that literally looks like a screw that then gets inserted into the human body and into the bone. So the surgeon, the physician, I should say, during the surgery, they would be drilling through a minimally invasive device a hole into your bone in the shoulder in one way, shape, or form, reattach a tendon to that together with that screw, and then while that screw dissolves and the tendon reattaches and the bone grows back, it basically leaves behind CO2 and water. That's essentially what's left out of that screw. So it's a pretty nifty technology in and of itself that we're involved with, and it harbors some additional future applications, specifically more so with that material in and of itself and its ability to be absorbed by the body in one way, shape, or form. One other point I wanted to maybe address to that prior question in terms of the future ahead. While yeah, there are great opportunities in terms of new product developments and how really awesome technologies and problem resolutions out there, the same applies for production processes. So some of the things that we would be looking for in our industry is the additive manufacturing, the 3D printing, and how we can utilize that technology to produce parts, to produce molds, to basically get that speed to market of that new device that much faster and service our customers better. And there are other process technologies as well in other areas, be it micro molding or other specific parts or other specific technologies that can be applied. Automation is a big field where there's a lot of things happening, especially with robots that can interact with people working on the floor without causing harm in one way, shape, or form, or drone-like equipment that can then operate more or less semi-automatically, given that it has some form of artificial intelligence. I think in the future, we will see a lot more of those kind of activities in one way, shape, or form, and that interaction and interface between the human and artificial intelligence or an automatic solution in one way, shape, or form, working hand in hand.
Okay, thank you. Roger, in the centrifuge business, do you see anything sort of mind-blowing that's going to be happening there?
So we work with a technology called centrifugal partition chromatography. It acts essentially like a silicone bed chromatography, except you've got two liquid phases, so it's completely lossless. Now, this technology is really good for isolating compounds that are otherwise incredibly difficult through regular liquid-liquid methods. So we've been finding a lot of natural products have been derived from this recently. One of the huge industries that it's in right now is cannabinoids. You're able to perform separations that would otherwise be impossible through regular means. And if you are able to do it through something like an HPLC, it's much higher volume. And where that's going to become really important, getting these isolates, is for accurate dosing and formulation. So currently, for example, we're working with UMass on these projects. It's going to be very beneficial to be able to get dosing exact rather than current extraction methods, which you'll have a mixture of different compounds.
And the cannabis industry is certainly growing in this area, so very important. Okay, we have a question here. Do panelists think recruitment problems are unique to the Berkshires, or are they more national in scope? Jeannie's shaking her head.
So much to
Uh,
say about this. They are certainly national, they are global, they are statewide. Yes, it's everywhere. It's not just the Berkshires. I also want to, if I could dovetail this with the piece of Ben's question about opportunities for rural communities. Again, I worked in Western Mass in the Gateway Hill towns, as well as for Gateway Regional High School for a little while. A couple of the opportunities I see, one, when I was working there starting in 2017, one of the big challenges was broadband. Y'all have pretty much fixed that by now. You got a lot of broadband access happening. Great job. Thanks, state governments, wherever all that money came from, it's working, and that was a really big deal. Transformative, in fact. So the other opportunity you have is affordable land. That is certainly not the case in Eastern Mass. Land costs, housing costs, cost of living, skyrocketing constantly. And I know you might, perhaps you feel that way as well in Western Mass, but comparatively, it's nothing. So that's an opportunity when it comes to attracting workers from outside the Berkshires. I'm sure for companies, all the folks on this panel can probably speak to the challenges for recruitment in terms of getting folks to come from outside the Berkshires. But the opportunities, the selling points you really have are, again, affordable real estate. Whether you're a company looking to expand and you need multiple acres for a biomanufacturing production facility, or you're just someone who's looking to buy a house, that is certainly a huge advantage that you have in Western Mass. The broadband piece, now that that's not a barrier, is huge. You also, I'll speak to one little other piece about my time at Gateway Regional. One of the things in Eastern Mass is that by and large, so many of these high schools, so many kids are expecting to go to a four-year school or expecting to go to a bachelor's degree college. And when I was doing work at Gateway, I was working with kids who absolutely were not doing that. I think the percentage of folks who are expecting to go to vocational school is somewhere in the 40s or 50s. It's almost half of those kids are expecting to go into the trades in some way. And that culturally there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? Stigma against that. Whereas in many of the more urban areas in the Eastern Mass, there is some, and folks have this focus, that this sense that they need to go into immense student debt and go to these really expensive, really elite colleges. Whereas many of these companies, again, are looking for folks coming out of certificate programs or associate's degree programs or trade programs. So a huge opportunity you have in rural communities in general. I grew up in a rural community in Missouri, by the way, grew up on a farm. A lot of my friends as well, planning on going into the trades or becoming farmers for that matter. So combination of opportunities, you have broadband, affordable real estate, a sort of vocational trade approach and a cultural acceptance of that as a viable career path that I think will serve you all in the future as we continue to try to attract companies out there.
Sorry, I need to unmute myself. Boyd Biomedical works both in the Boston area as well as here in the Berkshires, and the other companies work in other parts of the country. Do you also find that issues related to recruitment, how might they be the same or different?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, our office in Boston is primarily focused on our sales and business development side of things. And that allows a little bit more flexibility just in the work that they're doing to work remotely or hybrid. It's tough with manufacturing, you need to be on site. And so that certainly we have those challenges when it comes to recruiting and getting people in the door. I would say that is probably exacerbated now. I'm sure everyone's feeling a little bit of a crunch, but it's always been, I'd say it's always been present challenge throughout the time that I've been at Boyd, just to get people. And I know that it is certainly a cheaper place to live and work than Eastern Mass. It's also, I think a lot of companies are probably seeing opportunities to move their workforces outside of the 495 Beltway. I know a lot of lab spaces are going up in the Boston area, but it's really not that far for folks to come out here as well. And so we're trying to recruit from a little bit further afield, from Springfield and Chicopee, Northampton, it's a couple more miles down the highway, but at least they're not getting stuck in traffic trying to go into the city.
Okay, Roger, I see you shaking your head there.
Oh, just in regards to the comments about the vocational school stigma. Before I went to get a degree in chemical engineering, I spent 10 years in automotive heavy collision repair. I'm a welder. I have a background in structural repair. I can take anything apart, put it back together. After getting out of school for chemical engineering, that's what got me a job at Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, because if anything went down with the equipment, I was able to go in and fix it very quickly. That's been part of my success at Robotel. I have an intense mechanical background. So in addition to being able to help engineer process solutions for our customers, I'm also able to diagnose what's going wrong and see problems before they happen. I wouldn't be able to do that without the mechanical background I had ahead of time.
Okay, thank you very much. A very important point. And there are some questions here about success with immigrants in these fields. Jean has responded to that. And so for our three panelists, have you been hiring recent immigrants into your operations, or has that been an area that you've looked at? Roger?
So one of the engineers who started right around the same time as me, excellent mechanical engineer. He's from Russia, and he had a background working in the Russian oil fields. So we were able to use his background in mechanics and apply it to the centrifuge industry. But yes, he's been one of our most valuable assets.
Okay, and I've spent a lot of time in Russia, and some of that up near the Arctic Circle with oil fields, and it would make the Berkshires look fabulous. Okay, other people.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that is certainly a so-called untapped potential, so to say. A lot of folks are coming from other countries with some degree in one way, shape, or form, or some information, and it does also tie a little bit into what Roger had mentioned earlier with that vocational education and the vocational education, if you will, in one way, shape, or form. That's exactly the kind of people we need. Resilient, yet also curious, motivated, dedicated, and looking for the opportunity here to build a future for themselves and their families. And that is certainly a talent pool we are engaging with. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Linnea?
Yeah, I will say we've been lucky enough to get some immigrant workers and from South and Central America. I think it's been mostly because they happen to be in the area throughout just because of other ties that they had. So I'd love to see sort of concerted efforts to be able to get more willing and folks in.
Okay, and I'll just chime in on that. I placed 4 Afghan refugees in jobs, in manufacturing jobs, and 3 in manufacturing and 1 in construction. So the Berkshires have been very welcoming to them. We have another question here, which is, are the cultural and outdoor strengths of the Berkshires, Tanglewood, Jacob's Pillow, all of our local theaters, and our wonderful outdoor resources, are those strengths that help you in the recruiting process?
Yes, absolutely. I would say yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think especially after pandemic, I think that access to wide open spaces, into greenery, and to be able to get outside have really shown their value. And so places like Tanglewood and Jacob's Pillow and all the other great things around here, the hiking trails have really sort of helped our case and been able to recruit.
Torsten?
Yeah, I mean, the Berkshires is a great area, no doubt about it. I mean, people from Boston and New York think so too. So clearly, there's a lot of attractiveness in the area, and it is definitely a pull we are bringing to the table, specifically when we're talking to people that are maybe not local to the area or not familiar with it and just see Pittsfield on the map in and of itself, or the Berkshires in and of itself. So yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Roger, would you like to chime in on this?
I haven't been able to use it as much of a recruiting tool. I'm not from the area. I'm originally from Western Mass, but I grew up in Sunderland. I live in East Hampton. So I commute almost an hour and a half to be out here every day.
Okay. Yep, thank you. There are lots of comments here about ways that they would like to, the way that Ben Sosny at the BIC would like to connect all of our panelists to opportunities to work with potential workforce development resources, whether that's at the community college or through programs that the BIC has. I'm just checking here to see if I've missed questions.
There's one note in there about workforce partnerships that if I could hijack another 30 seconds, not to
please.
Time. Okay, I'm excited about it. I'm spending a lot of time on it lately. It sort of speaks to that connection piece as well. So workforce partnerships, we've been trying to more directly connect employers with training providers in their region. So we've been sort of piloting this program. There are many examples of successful partnerships that happen certainly without our involvement, and in many cases we're trying to replicate and scale those. But some successful methods, things we've learned so far and things we're definitely going to be expanding in the coming year and funding is starting with the companies to say, what are the core competencies? What are the things you need someone to walk in on day one with? And we're talking maybe like 5 or 6 or 7 skills, not the whole range of 30 that you need to have someone on the job actually producing, because in many cases these companies, correct me if I'm wrong, are doing a lot of training anyway. Once you have someone walk in the door, you're going to spend some time training them on your particular equipment, your particular processes, etc. So if we could build some kind of modular core curriculum that we could agree upon in terms of biotech and advanced manufacturing, and have that sort of spread across the community colleges, again, vocational schools, four-year schools as well. So you could start with companies like Spectrum, Berkshire Sterile, Boyd, etc., and be able to say, what are these core competencies for some of these entry-level roles? How could we build maybe a 3-month training program around that at, again, MCLA would be great, Berkshire Community College, and then we at the state level are here to fund that. It turns out the one thing we have now is money, which was not always the case. But we do right now, especially for workforce development. So it's building that core curriculum, and then it's us stepping in and saying, all right, at the rate of ballpark $10,000 a student, can we fund MCLA standing up this program, get some graduates from it, have them hired, make the proof of concept, and then scale that so that we're not talking about a cohort of 10, we're talking about a cohort of 20 or 30. And then again, that encourages more companies to grow out there, seeing that the workforce is being provided. So we're scaling that in a great way, but the methodology, it starts with the company's needs. Then it's about connecting them to the training providers. And then on the funding side, we're not trying to ask these training providers to do more with less, because we know they're already struggling with teacher shortage and bandwidth, and everybody's tight anyway and wearing multiple hats. So where the state can come in and say, we're here to fund this, we're here to make this easy, we're here to take the risk out of it. That's what we're here for, especially in the next year. So again, anyone interested in doing that, please don't hesitate to reach out. Money we've got for once.
Okay. For those of you in this life sciences biomedical area, Taconic High School, the city of Pittsfield has proposed that it become a technical education center exclusively. It's a new building. There's lots of great new equipment there. If there were 2 or 3 things that from your perspective in the biomedical field that would be really valuable for Taconic to do for high school students to get them in the door? What would be some of the things that would be most important for you from a workforce development perspective?
I'm happy to hear from the companies actually on the call, but if you just want my experience so far, we have 7 companies in the pipeline that we're doing this with. So that's the information I have so far. Some of that is around basic clean room practices would be cool. The idea of documentation, process documentation, so Microsoft Word skills, attention to detail, some very basic things that I talked about, all that VR stuff with expensive equipment. Most of this is not that. It's just sort of attention to, in many cases, a very regulated environment. So the knowledge that accuracy is important, you need to be careful. There are some areas you can't go in, things can be contaminated. Understanding the basic environment that you're working in when you're involved in a clean room or producing things that are in many cases so accurate and so specific and so important. Process documentation I talked about. Some basic leadership. Again, most of the companies I've been working with at least don't want folks to just feel like they're coming in at the entry level and that they'll be stuck there and pigeonholed. They want to see some potential for growth, to be able to get promoted, to move up. Many of these companies also offer tuition reimbursement for additional higher education. So I talk about these 3-month training programs really as a gateway and as a launch pad to get folks in the door. And then the additional training can happen subsequently when they see what the potential is. I'm so glad Roger shared his experience about coming from auto technicians and all these different trade experiences, because that's where some of these companies have seen the most success is, yeah, students from auto technician programs, HVAC, folks with sort of a problem solving mentality. So basic problem solving, clean room, the understanding of a regulatory environment, process documentation, those have been the most popular ones I've seen so far in the core competencies, but would love to hear input on any of that or additions from the actual companies.
Yeah, if I may speak to that a little bit, that makes perfect sense, Jean, and I second that. There are a lot of good traits that people can come in with, and frankly, it's just a natural curiosity that we're looking for. Okay, and it's someone who asks questions in one way, shape, or form, and just doesn't necessarily accept the status quo. To your point, in terms of problem resolver, but also maybe takes the initiative and finds the problem along the lines of see it, own it, solve it, do it. And I know that may be asking a little bit lot from someone who fresh comes out of high school in one way, shape, or form. But if those traits are already a little bit there, that they have that natural curiosity, if you will, in one way, shape, or form, that helps tremendously with everything else. I mean, the rest comes by play, so to say, and comes by just learning by doing and doing it on the job in one way, shape, or form. We certainly support that development process over the years and or decades, for that matter. If people and if individuals are interested in one way, shape, or form, just that drive and that energy, I guess, needs to come from those particular individuals in one way, shape, or form. The world is really open for individuals coming out of high school or what have you, as we've discussed earlier, to not necessarily having to go through an engineering degree, but doing something with technical acumen, or maybe something with how to negotiate with other people, or how to deal with the organization at large in one way, shape, or form, and applying those soft skills. So there's a variety of different options that people can apply what they already naturally know in one way, shape, or form. But it's that attitude in the beginning that I think is important, that openness to learning, that openness to maybe also getting feedback about things that don't go so well. And I think those are traits that we look for in our future leaders of our business when we're making hiring decisions. Because at the end of the day, that high school grad that comes in, maybe not the next, but he or she may be a general manager in the future, okay, and running one of our businesses or this facility here. And that kind of teamwork, that engagement, that energy, that's some of the things that we're looking at when we're looking at candidates.
Okay, Torsten, thank you very much. And I think we're going to do a wrap here with that. We're right at 6:29. But I want to say for my part, it's been very exciting to hear about the kind of products that you're developing. the kind of partnerships that you have with businesses across Massachusetts and across the world. And especially, I think in this day when people talk about the fact that people only have jobs for a year or two and then they get booted out and sent someplace else, the career ladders that each of you have described and the way in which your company is providing training is very encouraging. And I hope we can share that with our high school students, community college students, and undergraduates at our local colleges. So thank you very, very much to everyone. Next week, we are going to be looking at the creative economy in the Berkshires and how tech is transforming the creative economy, and that will include people from Jacob's Pillow, Mass Mocha, and Berkshire Filmworks. So thank you very much to everyone, and we look forward to hearing about great things happening with all of your firms and with the Mass Life Science Center.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you for having me on.
Good night.